Hi, I am Fernández Galeote, and I'm here to introduce the article Avatar Identities and Climate Change Action in Video Games, Analysis of Mitigation and Adaptation Practices, which I co-author with Zampeta Legaki and Juho Hamari. In this study, we found and analyzed 80 video games where players engage in some form of climate action, namely mitigation, when we try to reduce greenhouse gas emissions, and adaptation, when we find ways to adjust to climate risks and impacts. Our main point of interest in these games was the avatar, or the element that represents the player in the game world, and more specifically, aspects of the avatar's primary identity. One of our main results is the building of 6 avatar identity types, which I will explain a bit later. Each of these identity types offers unique opportunities for players to engage with climate change, perhaps even beyond the screen. We also look at the actions that avatars can take, including different types of mitigation and adaptation, and examine whether the ultimate goal of these games is related to climate action. From our findings, we derive some implications and recommendations for 3 key audiences: researchers, game developers, and educators. So, why should we care about climate change and avatars in digital games? First, because all the economic, political, and social changes required to have a sustainable future require also a radical cultural shift. And digital games are an important cultural manifestation that should become more environmentally and socially sustainable in itself, but can also contribute to engaging players. It is also worth noting that games and gamification can be used and have been used to drive engagement with climate change. We focus on avatars because they are a central element in the player's game experience and the main cue signaling who the player is supposed to be in the game world. And also because player-avatar relationships can be central in affecting, for example, certain attitudes in the game and out of it. Finally, of course, because in the area of climate change games especially, avatars and avatar identities are not commonly studied or discussed. Given these reasons, we wanted to address 3 questions in our study. First, what identity types exist in climate change games and what interesting features do these avatars present? Second, what climate issues are tackled in these games? And third, how does climate change relate to goals? To answer these, we followed a systematic process of search and selection that resulted in 80 computer games where players engage in climate action, including gamified systems where people play by engaging in real-world behavior. Then we use qualitative text analysis techniques to build the avatar types according to their norms and goals, to classify climate actions, to uncover other avatar features of interest, such as the presence of bodies, characters with a personality, customization options, the number of players in each game, and the spatial scope of the games. To answer our first question, through our analysis of avatar identities, we built 6 different types. Climate selves, found in 9 games, where players are expected to commit to or take actions with an environmental impact in the real world. Climate citizens, in 4 games, who engage in day-to-day climate-related actions require no special skill or status in a fictional world. Climate heroes, in 21 games, who use specialized tools or skills to attain climate-related goals. Empowered individuals, in 3 games, where avatars can engage in consumption, production, and deliberation to pursue individual and/or collective development, sometimes leading to a form of victory. Importantly, these can negatively affect the climate. Authorities, found in 34 games, where players have a large amount of power over a collective, but this power is limited by particular interests and environmental impacts, and they are asked to pursue development, very often having to confront climate challenges to attain the goal. And finally, faction leaders in 9 games, with large power over a collective, which is limited by tensions with similar agents and the environment, and the goal being to reach some form of victory. We also looked at some relevant variables according to past avatar scholarship and found that bodies, characters, and customization features are scarce in the sample. Moving to our second question, we found that mitigation is quite more common than adaptation, with 70 games versus 34. And mitigation can take very different forms, from individual lifestyle changes to policymaking or even the use of violence. So I recommend checking out the paper for more details. Perhaps unsurprisingly, mitigation can be found in games with many different avatar identity types, but adaptation is usually left to those identities with more decision-making power. We also see a rather balanced presence of different spatial scales. 36% of games include the personal scale, 42% the local, 44% a larger region, and 52% a global setting for the climate action. It is interesting that 52% of the games combine at least two of these, and 38% include both a personal or local setting and a regional or global one. Answering our third question, we see that in all of the games with the climate itself, a citizen or a hero, and in 82% of authorities, one must address climate change to pursue the goal. Meanwhile, empowered individuals and faction leaders do impact the environment, but the situation is much more based on responsibility, strategy, negotiation, and so on. This creates a tragedy of the commons like situation where a tension exists between individual gains and collective demise. The paper includes a detailed discussion on the potential of each of the six avatar identity types to engage players with climate change, from real-world behavior support in gamification to the inspirational potential of heroes, the extension of the role of the citizen that we can see in empowered individual games, or the understanding of decision-making and negotiation that can happen in the games with authorities or faction leaders. We also discussed the imbalance between mitigation and adaptation in games, since adaptation is becoming more and more important in our time, but the percentage of games where players can adapt to climate change doesn't seem to be growing. We also mentioned how recent literature indicates that climate action, as a compulsory winning condition, may not be necessary to support forms of climate engagement. We detail our contributions to avatar scholarship, or how can our findings open new avenues to study avatar effects in climate change games and beyond, and in video games, but also beyond digital spaces. And finally, we offer a list of recommendations for researchers interested in climate change and or avatars in games, for developers in this area, and for educators interested in using games for learning. Once again, I recommend checking out the article for that list of recommendations, which we hope will spark some new and fruitful ideas. This is our paper. Thank you.